You may have noticed we are ending the decade very, very soon. So to mark the occasion, we've asked the boys to come up with their Premier League team of the decade. That's 2010 to 2020, Stephen. Let's start off with Craig, shall we? Look at that. Oh, look at Craig's sexy picture staring you down. So sultry.
What?
Oh, what a decade! What a decade that face has had, right?
Well, that's mid-decade.
Go on then, Craig.
Even though he's struggled a bit in latter years, De Gea for me was quite a simple choice. I think Walker was a relatively easy choice. I know the boys have got something different to offer, but Walker for me, he's not played well this year, but he's been, for the decade, he's been for me the best fullback at Tottenham, and that's why Man City bought him, paid the big bucks from Vincent Kompany. Then I've left out Van Dijk because John Terry had 5 or 6 years at Chelsea. In that period, in the early decade, he won the Champions League. Okay, he didn't play. He won the FA Cup. He won the league title twice before he retired. And Patrice Evra won the title twice. These players were coming towards the end. Are you guys going to say anything? What?
No, it's your team. Just go ahead. Your team. Don't get nervous.
I'm not nervous.
You
should
be.
Have you seen the team?
Hazard carried Chelsea. Silva has not been a better. Oh God.
Never mind.
Yeah,
moving on. No, this is a better team.
No, it's not.
As Craig said, De Gea in goal. I thought that was pretty simple. Ivanovic for me, who was one of the most underrated defenders in.
So you'd say Ivanovic is a better player than Kyle Walker?
Yes, I just did. Robertson, Van Dijk, who I think is the best defender.
Yeah, but it's not who's the best player. What's Van Dijk? He's had 2 good years at Liverpool.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, here we go. It's not the best.
2 very good years.
Well, it's not. No.
It's what you won. Well, if it's what you won, then we would just look up who's won the most and then put the team.
It's not necessarily the best player. This is a decade.
Well, I think he's had a very good 2 years this decade.
So, for example, John Terry in that decade, and he was coming towards the end. Champions League, 2 titles and an FA Cup, or whatever it was, close to that.
So we go in purely on titles.
Titles have got to be a massive factor.
No, I'm just yes, but my point is this, and listen, I understand the argument, but at the same time, was John Terry at his best during the course of this decade? I thought, as a player, you saw his best years, maybe it's just straddling the decade, so to speak. So if we're just going on his performances this decade, I'd have Van Dijk. If we're going on just performances.
Then Hazard, Aguero, Salah. No Kane.
No Kane for me.
Why not?
I don't think he's done enough individually and certainly hasn't won enough silverware with Spurs.
Stevie, you've got Kane.
No, I haven't.
Oh, sorry, Mane. Mane?
Yeah. Well, I get it. It's the criteria. You know, I've got Van Dijk, right? And listen, John Terry was absolutely fantastic. There's no question. But he didn't dominate the way this guy has the last 2 seasons.
But they didn't win last season.
Well, tell it. Well, don't start throwing us.
I'm just saying, surely
I'm just
a
telling
team
you what
of the decade should be defined by winners.
Well, I think it's hard to argue what Craig was saying about titles and how good Terry was, but it didn't dominate. Nobody in this decade has dominated the way Van Dijk has. Okay, it's 2 seasons. And you can say the same about Robertson and Alexander-Arnold. Yes, Kyle Walker's a good player. And Danny Rose has been a good player for a couple of seasons. But the numbers that Robertson and Alexander-Arnold have put up in these last 2 years are way past any fullback in the last decade.
Kyle Walker.
These are the kind of things I'm going by.
Kyle Walker has been doing it from the start of the decade until his recent troubles and trials and tribulations where he hasn't been so well in the last 6 months. It's nearly 10 years of great fullback play, England's fullback, and winning titles with Man City. Why Pep Guardiola paid the big money for him over a couple of years.
I think the challenge in picking this squad and not just players like John Terry, but you can also include Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, is as good as those players were.
Wayne Rooney played this decade.
As good as those players were, a big chunk of their successes came in the last decade.
But Van Dijk's success has just come right at the end of this decade.
Yes, but
these two are just getting carried away on the emotion of recent form.
As a player, he's just been that good, which is why you want to give him the nod. I don't think we've seen a defender, well, quite clearly, given what he's won individually in terms of Player of the Year, play as well and be as dominant as he has,
I mean,
albeit over a shorter period.
Are we just
There you
getting
go.
caught?
If you go to any other... Let's stay with Van Dijk. You go to any other centre-back in the last decade, how many of them were up for the Ballon d'Or? So does that not come into consideration? You might have been...
Ballon d'Or as consideration now.
No, but...
Oh, you're laughing. Look at your face.
When did you ever care about the Ballon d'Or?
Hold on a second. So all of a sudden, titles count, but maybe being voted the best player in the world, all of a sudden it's... but what are you talking about?
He wasn't voted best player in the world.
So
I'll tell you what. He'll be absolutely distraught if he was only the second best player
Just explain to
on
me
the
the
planet.
thinking behind Mane. Because surely someone like Sterling has been more successful, hasn't he?
Well, I'm thinking about the numbers. I'm thinking about what it's meant to the team. Are Liverpool European champions?
Are City
Without
English champions?
Mane? Well, is Sterling taking Man City to Champions League? No.
Is Mane taking Liverpool to domestic title?
Well, there you go. So this is why we're having a conversation. So it depends.
Let's
It depends.
be quick.
Again,
Let's-
always, it comes down to everybody's individual thought.
Let's lay our cards on the table here. You had a little late tinker with your team. Because at one point...
You had Alisson.
At one point, it looked like a Liverpool Select 11. In fact, it's not far off it now.
Frank Leboeuf is with us. Frank, you've been listening very patiently. Where do you stand on all of this nonsense?
Well, as much as I like the guy in the studio, and as much as I like, especially Steve and Liverpool, I don't understand because it's a Premier League team of the decade, not of the past 2 years. When you pick Robertson and Alexander
so
Arnold,
the last 2 years don't
who I
count.
love. Yeah, they can, but they're not the total. The thing is, you have to have the title, the influence, the charisma of the decade, not of the past 2 years, because otherwise you forget your past. I agree with Kompany and Aguero. Well done, the guys. You all put them. You forgot Petr Cech. Petr Cech is the goalkeeper who won the most title and has the biggest existence in the last decade in the Premier League. So I don't understand.
But
It's hard
De
to
Gea
put
carried
Van
Man
Dijk
United on his
outside.
back. De Gea carried Man United on his back for 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah,
Okay,
but for
he didn't
which
have a
result?
title, but that was nothing to do with De Gea. That was only because of the other 10 that were in front of him.
Well, since Petr Cech doesn't play for Arsenal, it's a big mess over there, you know. And he played before for Chelsea. But you have the right to choose anybody. You know, it's just a comparison that I make, that I do between what you guys decided and what I decide. I go with Craig. Walker has been tremendous for like 10 years for Tottenham and after for Man City. You have to put John Terry. You have to put Kompany. They've been absolutely outstanding for the past 10 years, even if the last 2 years they weren't very there, you know. And also, I don't see Steven Gerrard. How come Steven Gerrard cannot be in the Premier League team of the decade? I mean, that guy has the influence. Everybody, even me, when I saw him sleeping when Chelsea scored the goal and didn't allow Liverpool to win the title, I was sad for one guy, Stevie G. He was a one-man team, and guy, you have forgotten the man you shouldn't have forgotten, you know. And well, that's it. And it's hard for me to not put any Liverpool player, but they only played the last 2 years out of 10 years.
Who's the man that was forgotten, that you forgot, Frank?
Who's the man that Frank forgot?
No, one thing I would say, and it is difficult, there's a definite crossover of decades for certain players here, and I think Rooney, Lampard and Gerrard certainly in that bracket of, had it been earlier, not a shadow of a doubt, would they have been probably in most people.
When it comes to iconic moments of the day, you think Rooney's overhead kick, for example, but then not maybe enough to get into the 11.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.